Hey everyone, it's me Joji, and today we're going to be taking a look at the new League battle decks featuring Rapid Striker Urshifu and Single Striker Urshifu. Now these decks are meant to be played for League challenges and League championships. They are meant to be League ready. That's their whole point of being League battle decks. But we're going to take a look and see, are they really, or should you add stuff to these to make them actually League battle ready? So let's go ahead and get right to it. So let's start off by taking a look at the Rapid Strike Urshifu's deck. So in this deck, you also get a rule book in case you need a refresher, but if you're getting this deck, you definitely don't need a refresher unless it's been a while since you've played. There are obviously new rules with the new V cards compared to the GX cards. But yeah, good read if you do need a refresher. We also get a bit of help when it comes to how to play this deck. So this kind of go over the basis of what you should be trying to do, as well as how you could probably improve it. So this box also comes with the damage counters that we get normally and a 6-sided dice for rolling heads or tails, as well as the burn and poison counters. But to be fair, these do have some shine to them compared to the regular ones we usually get. We also get a nice looking deck box in case you want to put your cards in here. I don't think this would definitely fit any of these decks sleeved up, so you may want to get a better deck box at some point, but it does come with this, and of course a code card for you guys to use to test out this deck online. And before we dive into the whole deck, we do obviously get 2 of the Rapid Striker Urshifus. These are, I believe, the same ones from Battle Styles, as well as the Rapid Striker Urshifu VMAXs. These two, obviously, I believe there was only this version. There was no promo version, but there are alternate full art versions, and I think a Rainbow Rare version as well. So you get these 2 to start off with. Okay, so let's go over what we do get. As we mentioned, we get 2 Rapid Striker Urshifus Vs and 2 Rapid Striker Urshifu VMAXs. But we also get a 3-2 line of Remoraid and Octillery. Now, this is definitely useful in this deck because Rapid Strike Search helps you find your Rapid Strike items that you need. But keep in mind that you can only use 1 Octillery's ability per turn. So I understand why having 2 is more than enough. You don't want to have too many Octilleries on your field anyways, because they will be useless. We get a single Zagoon here for the extra damage counter that we can place onto a random Pokemon. A great way to help with knocking something out after using the Rapid Striker Urshifu VMAXs. Now for the next cards, I'm not too sure why they put these in, but it may be just because they're Rapid Strike Pokemon, but the attack does do 20 times the amount of Rapid Strike Pokemon in play, and most of the Pokemon you're going to have on your bench or in the active are going to be Rapid Strike anyways. So they added in 3 Phalanx. But then, as I said, kind of confusing because not all the cards they added were Rapid Strike. These are a 2-2 of Mincino and Cincino. Definitely for the make do ability here for more draw support. But probably not something I would have suggested putting in. Now that's it for our Pokemon cards. Now let's go on to the trainer cards. We do get a 3-line of Marnie, definitely a trainer card you want to have in any deck in the current format. We also get a 3-3 line of Professor's Research. In this case, we get Professor Juniper's version. It's nice to have. I don't think you want to discard any of these cards really, but if you need to, and if you're maybe left with only 1 card in your hand, it's okay to use a Professor's Research. But in other cases, I would suggest using a Marnie. We get a 2-2 line of Boss's Orders. This one's featuring Lysander, the non-holo version. There is a holo version that you get sometimes in some of the starter decks, but this is not the case. It is a regular Boss's Orders. Now we get some Rapid Strike supporters here for Karina's Focus. Great card, honestly, for draw support, especially in a Rapid Strike deck, because you can use it, or you can grab it using Octillery. So great way, if you need to get some more cards into your hand. Now we get a single Cheryl, and honestly, I don't think it's worth it. having to discard all your energy on your Pokemon to heal, but it could be useful if you don't have any energy to begin with on it. So it's a good way to heal, just only if you don't have any energy on your Pokemon. Moving on to the item cards, we have 4 Quick Balls, definitely one of the best items to come out in Sword and Shield. Great way to draw some stuff that you need. We also have 3 level balls, and these are definitely used to grab the Remoraid's and maybe the Zigzagoon or the Minccino, and I think even the Cinccino since it's 90 HP. So great way to grab one of those as well. We only get 2 copies of Switch in this deck, but I believe that the reason is because they give us 2 escape ropes. Now you could use 2 and 2, or my suggestion would be go ahead and get just 4 switches instead of the escape ropes. Or if you really wanted to, go ahead and be a bit more disruptive to your enemy, get 4 of these instead. They only put in 2 Evo incenses in this deck, even though there are 2 lines and more than 2 Pokemon that you would be able to evolve into. So if you want to keep the Octilleries and the Cincinos in this deck, I would suggest adding maybe 2 more, or maybe just 1 more Evo incense. Maybe even if you wanted to get rid of those escape ropes. These next couple of cards are just going to be a singular version of them. So we have an Ordinary Rod here, just 1. Good way to draw some Pokemon back that have been knocked out, or some energy that you discarded. We got a Scoop Up Net, which is definitely useful for the Zigzagoon's ability. We got a Tool Scraper to get rid of any pesky capes that we may need to remove to knock out Pokemon, or just any other items in general. We got a Pal Pad to help us search any of our trainer cards that we need. To be fair, I don't think it's really necessary, but it's there. This one is definitely a lot more useful than other cards. Fan of Waves gets rid of a special energy, which is definitely being played quite a bit in the current meta, so definitely worth maybe adding another 1 or 2 of these. For our only stadiums, we have 2 copies of Tower of Waters. It's really good for being able to retreat your Pokemon with less cost. It removes 2 energy costs from retreating, so not bad. Great way to substitute if you don't want to use this, maybe use some air balloons. And finally, moving on to our energy, we have 4 copies of Rapid Strike energy here. This is going to be your main energy you're going to be wanting to attach to your Rapid Strike Urshifus here, and if necessary, maybe to the Phalanx, or I guess the Octillery if you really are desperate. And we have 4 copies of Stone Fighting Energy. These help you with survivability. Now, these let you take 20 less damage from attacks, so Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX here would essentially have 350 HP instead of 330. It's a great way just in case you need to survive a hit or something. And finishing off our energy, we have just 4 regular fighting energy. So there are quite a ways to upgrade this deck, and we'll go over them in a second. But as it is honestly pretty competitive. You could use this, and if you get a good rhythm and understanding of this deck, you could win a couple matches. But let's go ahead and take a look at how we would upgrade this deck. So for my first change would definitely be removing the 3 Phalanx you get in this deck. You don't need the Phalanx. Instead, you should replace them with another copy of Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, so you can have a 3-line of that, and then 2 more Rapid Strike Urshifu Vs. So you would have a 4-3 line of Rapid Strike Urshifu V, Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, instead of these Phalanx. This is the first and foremost that I would suggest. Definitely one of the biggest suggestions. Definitely the best way to make this deck way more competitive, because Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX is going to be your main attacker. Nothing else should really take its place unless you're doing something more like an Inteleon VMAX deck as well, while also playing this guy. But first and foremost, this is going to be your main attacker in this deck. So up next on the chopping block are these cards right here. Now, Octillery definitely is a good card to have in any Rapid Strike deck, but it is not the best. There are other ways to search for the cards you need, such as if you're looking for a trainer, you could use that Pal Pad you needed. If you're looking for the Urshifu V or VMAX, you can definitely use the Quick Balls to get the V and the Evo Incest to get the VMAX. As for energy, there's things like energy search to grab those, so it's not really necessary for that either. So overall, artillery definitely could be replaced, and that in turn means the Rema raids also could be replaced. The stone energies are not important. Your main use is going to be that rapid strike energy. This is what you're going to be mainly attaching to your rapid strike Urshifu VMAXs. So you don't need the stone energy. And in this case, you don't want to be discarding other special energy that way either. And last but not least, we are removing the Cincino Mencino line because there are better ways to get cards other than the Cincino's make do ability. So my suggestions would be for these 4 cards down here, replace them with specifically the Rapid Strike Sabo. So this is where our Inteleon line is going to come into play. Starting off with 4 copies of the Sabo, replacing these 4 cards down here. Then instead of getting the Rapid Strike Drizzile, we're getting the Shady Dealings Drizzile. So you want to get 4 copies of that. Shady Dealings is going to be essentially how you're going to be getting cards you need. A great ability to use. And unfortunately, I don't have either of the other 2 Inteleons I'm about to talk about. So for these 3 Remorates up here, we're going to want to replace them with 2 copies of the Shady Dealings Inteleon and 1 copy of the Sharpshooter Inteleon. And you're probably wondering, what do we replace these 2 artillery with? Now, that sheet earlier did mention that we add in a Crobat, and that honestly is not a bad idea. And if you wanted to, you can maybe get rid of one of the Shady Dealings Inteleon or the Sharpshooter one and get a second Crobat instead. And the last one I would add in, since you are going to be doing damage to another Pokemon using Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, Passimian's ability is really good when it comes to adding that extra damage. So I'm going to go over the Pokemon trainer cards that we are going to remove first from the deck that you could replace with other items that I'll suggest later on. Now, Fan of Waves is the first one that's going to get removed. And to be fair, it does let you put in special energy from your opponent's Pokemon to the bottom of the deck, but that is not as helpful as you think it would be. It may stall them for a turn, but they may have a way to get that energy back some way or another. So first card to be removed, Fan of Waves. Moving on, we're getting rid of Karina's Focus. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we are adding that Inteleon line of Shady Dealings. That is going to be a really good draw support, and we also even added that Crobat, so you don't really need these Karina Focus. Palpad is another card that honestly doesn't have a good spot here in this deck, although now that we're removing some of these trainers, we don't really need this as much, and we can find trainers using Inteleon instead. What's going out next is Switch. Now, the main reason we're getting rid of these Switch cards is because we are running Tower of Waters, which lets us switch out without having to worry about the retreat costs. So these switches aren't really necessary. If anything, if you wanted to add a 3rd copy of Tower of Waters, would be a good idea just in case they bump off your first 2 that you had. And the last card we're going to be removing is an Escape Rope. I would suggest maybe even removing the 2nd one as well. But if you want to add a bit of disruption or switch out a Pokemon that you would want to knock out, because you will be running Tower of Water, so you can retreat back into the Pokemon that you're going to use to attack with, this is a good card to still use, so at least keep 1 copy of it in the deck. And because we did remove 1 copy and keeping the other, I would even suggest maybe removing a Boss's Orders, because you can use as many Escape Ropes as you want, but this Boss's Orders can only be used once. So this is a good disruption chance if there's not too many cards that they can choose from, or if all their cards are maybe VMAX or V cards for 2 prizes or 3 prizes. But if you need to, use this, but maybe having 2 is a little too much. Now, let's go over some cards I think we should add into this deck. We had a 3/3 line of Professor's Research. Now, I think we should add maybe a 4th Professor's Research, just as another chance for draw supporting, because if we play enough of our cards right with this deck, we will end up maybe with very little cards in our hands, and this possibly being one of them. So it's a good way to draw into some more cards to continue our turn and set up even better turns that way. Now that Sobble line is going to be very dependent on level balls, so I would suggest adding a 4th level ball to this line here to have 4 total, so you can use those on the Sobbles or the Drizziles. And again, to complement those Sobbles, Drizzile, and Inteleon line, I suggest adding another 2 copies of Evo Incense, because you're going to be wanting to evolve those to get that Shady Dealings ability a lot faster. And this one I'm a little hesitant to suggest, but Cheryl is a good way to heal your Pokemon. And because Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX does remove its energy using G-Max Rapid Flow, it could be a good combination to attack, and then after it has no energy, use your next turn a Cheryl to heal any damage it may have taken. So it's a good way because you won't have to worry about setting this up, or in this case, losing any energy before setting up once again. But those are my suggestions for this deck of Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. It's definitely very competitive as it stands, but with my suggestions, I think it probably could get better. Okay, so now we're going to go over the Single Strike Urshifu VMAX's League Battle deck and what's inside and what cards are in it. Once again, we do have the rule book in case, again, you do need a refresher for the rules on the current Pokemon trading card game. And once again, each one of these does come with a sheet to tell you how to play the current deck as it is, as well as how to upgrade this deck. And we'll maybe talk about some of these suggestions as well as go over suggestions that may not be on here. So just like the Rapid Strike one, we get instead though red damage counters and a 6-sided dice for rolling heads or tails, plus our burn and poison counters here in a shiny form. We also get a box of Single Strike Urshifu VMAX that holds all the cards that aren't Single Strike Urshifu V or VMAX, plus a code for deck online so you can test it on there as well. So this deck, just like the other one, does only come with a 2/2 line of Rapid Strike Urshifu V here, and this is the one from Battle Styles, not the promo, as well as the VMAX here, which I don't believe had a promo ever, so we have the regular Battle Styles version, not the secret rare version. So what other cards we get are a 4/3 line of Houndour, Houndoom, both single strike Pokemon here, but definitely another good engine. And honestly, probably an engine you're going to want to keep in almost any single strike deck you're going to be building, regardless if it's a single strike Urshifu or Umbreon VMAX. And this deck isn't as heavy with the Pokemon compared to the other. We get 2 copies of Stone Journal Single Strike here. Not the best single strike Pokemon, I think. Definitely one of the cards that's going to get replaced. But then we also have 2 Primate Wisdom Orangaroos. Not bad of a card, especially because of Primate Wisdom being a really good effect, but could be better. Now let's move on to the trainer supporter cards. Now we have 4 copies of Professor's Research. Surprising that this deck gets 4 while the Rapid Strike only gets 3, but we do get 4 copies of this Professor Juniper's Professor's Research. We get 3 copies of Marnie here as well, followed by 2 Boss's Orders and a single Bruno card. Now this deck profile as it stands is pretty heavy with items. It has 4 copies of Quick Ball, 4 copies of Urn of Vitality, which is going to be more useful once we figure out what it's going to be used for, 3 copies of Evo Incense for that Houndour Houndoom line, 2 copies of Switch, plus 2 copies of Escape Rope. And rounding up our item cards are 1 copy of Ordinary Rod and a Tool Scraper. Now these next 2 are items, but I should mention that they are Poke Tools. These get attached to your Pokemon. The Single Strike Scroll of Scorn lets you have a new type of attack, which is Furious Anger. Does 10 plus 10 for every damage counter on the Pokemon this is attached to. It's going to be very useful with the Houndoom's effect. As for our only stadium, we get 4 copies of Tower of Darkness, which is definitely useful when it comes to using this in conjunction with the Urn of Vitality. This makes you discard a card in order to use its effect, so the Urn of Vitality is very useful in getting that card back. Moving on to the energies, we get 4 copies of the Single Strike energy, very important for this deck here, as well as 4 copies of Stone energy once again, just like in the previous deck. And just like in the previous deck, we get 4 copies of Fighting energy. So as it stands, there are quite a bit of changes that would go into this deck, but really this one I would say is the better one suited for playing as is compared to the Rapid Strike one. But keep in mind, it's going to be very risky when it comes to using it because of Houndoom putting damage counters on your own Pokemon when you use its ability. So play with caution, but it may be the one that does the most damage. So if you want to play safe, I would suggest going and playing with the Rapid Strike one for now, but let's go over and see how we could upgrade this deck here. Okay, so we're going to start off with the Pokemon you should remove, and these are the only 4 that are the cards that definitely need to be removed. These full lines of Stonjourner and Oranguru. We do not need these cards. We want to focus on attacking. So in replacement of those, I would suggest adding in a Houndoom, 2 copies of Single Strike Urshifu V, and another copy of the Single Strike Urshifu VMAX. So you would have a 4-3 line of this Single Strike Urshifu and a 4-4 line now for the Houndoom line. And a different suggestion would be, instead of having a 4-3 line of the Rapid Strike Urshifu, you could add instead another grouping of maybe the Umbreon Single Strike card that is out there. That one's a really good card and it's been doing pretty well in some decks. So try that out if you are able to get that card instead. Now, when it comes to our trainer supporter cards, I would suggest there's only one card that really needs to get removed. It's our Bruno. We don't need this Bruno. And in its replacement, I honestly suggest, you know what, add instead of this draw support, add a Crobat instead as a draw support. This is better than the Bruno card in my opinion. Okay, so let's go over the item cards that we're going to remove from this deck. Starting off with a Tool Scraper, the 2 copies of Switch. I would suggest maybe 1, or if you can, the 2nd copy of Escape Rope, and Ordinary Rod, and the 4 copies of Stone Fighting Energy. These aren't necessary in my opinion when it comes to this Single Strike deck. Cards that I would suggest adding instead of these would be maybe another copy of Evolution Incense, maybe some copies of Air Balloon to switch out your Single Striker Shifus, even maybe some Capture Energies. That way you can put some of your other cards onto there to prepare and evolve into on your next turn. So that is going to be it for today's video, and those are my suggestions on how to upgrade these 2 different decks. Definitely my suggestion for getting, if you wanted to choose which one of these you should get, I really am partial to water types, so I would suggest the Rapid Strike Urshifu. There are a lot of combinations you can do with this deck, such as I mentioned, the Shady Dealings Inteleons, or you can even add the new Inteleon VMAX into this deck. And there have been other cases where even adding in weird cards like Moltres was actually viable for Rapid Strike Urshifu. But Single Strike has been making rounds with adding Umbreon VMAX into this deck, so it's a good suggestion to maybe look into this if you can't get other copies of this Rapid Strike to run as is. Maybe if you have those Umbreon VMAXs, use this deck instead. So guys, let me know what you think. How would you upgrade these decks instead? Do you have any other suggestions, or did you think maybe some of the points I made may be different or could be better? But let me know down in the comments what you think. And if this video was helpful, leave a like, get subscribed, because I do enjoy making these videos where I help people learn how to play and even make their decks more competitive. So if it did help you out, again, get subscribed and leave a like. Anyways guys, hopefully you did enjoy this video, and as always, stay safe and thanks for watching.